Good afternoon. We welcome to the Senate Vice President Leni Robredo and her team. May we ask the ComSec to put into the record the presence of everyone here today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. For the proposed 2019 budgets of the Office of the Vice President of the Philippines, the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, and the National Security Council, we have the following resource persons. For the Office of the Vice President of the Philippines, Honorable Maria Leonor G. Robredo, Vice President of the Philippines. Mr. Philip Francisco U.D., Chief of Staff. Ms. Sofia C. Yanto Abad, Assistant Chief of Staff. Mr. Paulo Raynor E. Salvosa, Director Technical Services Office. And Ms. Jennifer J. Tan, Director for Administrative and Financial Services Office. We also have Ms. Julieta L. Villa del Rey, Chief Accountant. For the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, we will have Mr.
May we,
This one.
we'll just proceed with the OVP budget, and I know the Vice President is very busy, and the two agencies for Intel and Security will come after. So there's also no need to present to us your budget. We have a hard copy here. May we just know how you spent the amendments and whether it's all been obligated for the year, and what is it that you need. I would assume, and I have a message here, that you would need the reinstatement because it was not in your presented budget. Yes. We recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the members of the committee. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Madam Chair, if we will recall, when we presented the budget last year, we told the committee and also the senators during the plenary that because we have a very limited budget and we did not have budget, we did not have an appropriated amount for our programs, we were largely dependent on private donor support. The problem with the problem with a donor-driven program is that while we want to respond to all the needs of the communities that we've adopted, if those needs are not really within the program of the organization supporting us, then we could not provide for those needs. Because of what we presented, Madam Chair, it was proposed by your committee that we be given an allocation for locally funded projects to be able to respond to those needs, so that we will not be 100% dependent on our private donors. It has been a huge help to the office and to the communities we've supported, Madam Chair. We were able to support As of September, we were able to give support to 12 LGUs already, and 2,298 beneficiaries. All of this, 2,298 individuals. All of this are, especially the LGU support, Madam Chair, are in the purview of our Angat Buhay program, which is the anti-poverty program of the office. But if we look at slide 6, Madam Chair, we'll notice that while we requested for a similar amount, we did not request for an additional amount, Madam Chair. We only requested for a similar amount for 2019. But the DBM recommendation did away with the assistance given by this committee to our office. And would respectfully want to move, Madam Chair, that it be reinstated in the budget in as much
Granted.
as it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Actually, you didn't have to ask. I think it was our initiative last year
Yes,
when we
yes.
realized that you were sourcing from the private sector. You can still source. I think that's legal. That's allowed. But you're the second highest official of the land, and people ask you for projects, and your Angat Buhay projects must be supported. And it's a small amount compared to the whole budget.
Yes.
And so, with or without your asking, the committee would have initiated the restoration of the present year's amendment.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Madam Chair. In fact, Madam Chair, last year, we did not ask for additional amount, but it was the initiative really of this committee to give us that particular amount. And we realized how much of a help it has been to our communities.
I have no questions in your budget. I
Thank
know
you,
that you've
Madam.
been here since noontime, and we moved the hearing from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And so, unless Senator Antiveros, I'm sure she has no questions. Yeah, and would you join
Only
me
support,
in
Madam Chair. I
restoring
join you
the
100%.
amendment to that? So we still have two other agencies. We thank the Vice President for
Thank you,
coming
thank
here
you.
herself. We only see you once a year, although Lisa sees you more frequently. So,
Thank you,
and,
Madam Chair.
Yes. And so your budget is deemed approved on the committee level, and I'm sure in plenary there should be no problem at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your visit.
Thank you.
May we request the NSC and the NICA to take your seats, and for the COMSEC to read into the record the presence of everyone here. May we read into the record the presence of everyone from NICA and NSC. Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the 2019 budgets of the National NICA and the National Security Council, we have the following resource persons: Mr. Alex Paul I. Monteagudo, Director General NICA; Mr. Abelardo P.
Sir, you need not stand. Thank you.
Mr. Abelardo P. Villacorta, Deputy Director General for Special Concerns; and Mr. Virgilio A. Hernandez, Deputy Director General for Operations. For the National Security Council, we have Secretary Hermogenes C. Esperon, the National Security Advisor and Director General, National Security Council; Mr. Rufino S. Lopez Jr., Deputy Director General; Ms. Filonila D. Balitaan, Assistant Director General; and Mr. Lorenzo A. Clavejo, Director 5. That would be all, Madam Chair.
May we hear from the National Security Council and then the NICA. Thank you. Can we skip the mandate and the vision?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to the others who would join later. NSC. Skip the mandates. The budgetary trusts and priorities for fiscal year 2019. The budgetary requirements of the NSC is intended to support the following major programs, projects, and activities: provision of national security advice to the President through the conduct of strategic planning and continuing review of national security policy environment, conduct of policy and strategic studies, provision of daily situational awareness to the President by producing reports from the Presidential Situation Room. Manage national security environment through provision of guidance and supervision over the intelligence community, provision of technical and secretarial support to Subcommittee, National Crisis Management Committee, through monitoring and contingency preparation for crisis management, provision of technical and secretarial support to NSC, SGP cluster, and other relevant interagency coordination. SJP is the Security, Justice, and Peace cluster, which is under the National Security Council itself. Enhancing the regular NSC operations by setting up mechanisms to increase office productivity and responsiveness in the areas of knowledge management, human resource development and career planning, admin operations, strategic performance management, ISO-based quality management, and climate change awareness. Madam Chair, the following are the salient features of the NSC fiscal year 2009 budget proposal.
Maybe to spare the voice of the secretary, and since I have a hard copy and I'm familiar with your budget, may I just ask one simple question? What would you consider as the greatest national security threat today in our country and in the world?
It looks like terrorism would be a worldwide threat, as it involves a lot of regions, especially in the Middle East, and the foreign terrorist fighters are coming back, are coming back to their areas of origin, and some of them were Indonesians, Malaysians, and a few Filipinos. And there is now a move to come back and establish the so-called Wilayat province. That was the Marawi itself, the attempt on Marawi. Having vanquished, having defeated decisively the ISIS-related groups in Marawi, it will take some time before they could again rear their heads. But we still have the BIFF, the Abu Sayyaf, and other smaller groups which could be tapped by the ISIS International. But for the existence of the Republic, it would still be the communist terrorist groups or the CPP in PA that we would consider as the primary threat, as they have indeed, the chairman himself has just declared that he would topple and oust the national government or this government within 2019 or as soon as possible. So CPP in PA.
An open declaration. And
By
number
the
one,
chairman.
who do you consider as the chairman of the CPP and NDF? Number two, was that clarified or vetted as an open statement from the chair of the NDF? In media reports as a headline, but we don't necessarily believe those as a statement. I can actually call the chairman of the NDF now and put him on speakerphone
Yeah.
to see if it was really a declaration, because I would be first to tell him, huwag kayong ganyan. But I'm not sure if the NDF actually said that.
He is chairman, Mr. Jose Maria Sison, is tagged as the chief consultant of the NDF, but by our holdings, he is actually still the chairman of the Communist Party of the Philippines. Therefore, his pronouncements would bear on the directions of their operations in the local scene.
Actually say it in clear communications, or it was a quote of media?
He did say that he wants this government to be ousted in 2019. In fact, in the documents of their documents that are published, specifically Ang Bayan, which is their primary organ that goes down the line, they are for the ouster of the government. And we have, of course, our action agents that are in the field to verify this.
Worldwide, the greatest national security threat would be terrorism. But in the
Terrorism.
Philippines, aside from terrorism, it would be the insurgency, the
The-
insurgents, and one of that is the CPP, NPA, NDF.
It will be 50 years by next year. And at least we're seeing better results with the secessionist movement, as we have signed the peace agreements with the MILF, and we hope to have the BOL passed, and we are ready to go for a better and more meaningful autonomy in the South.
The BOL has been passed, the plebiscite will be held in January, and we have funded what's needed for next year's implementation of the BOL. May I know, Secretary, what's the armed strength of the NPA?
The armed strength is about a little bit less than 4,000. But
Less
we are not looking at their armed group alone, although we are aware that the primary struggle that they are conducting is through armed struggle. But they have their national United Front organizations, both underground and above ground. We can see also some of them getting into the lawmaking sphere, which we have allowed with the repeal of Republic Act 1700. Nonetheless, these party-list groups have worked for the benefit of the Communist Party of the Philippines. So it's not just the armed groups, but we are also looking at their strength in the labor sector, in the student sector, in the youth sector, in the IP sector. We believe that in the red areas, their center of gravity would be the indigenous peoples, which they have turned into warriors. 70% of the warriors of the NPA now are indigenous peoples. While in the white area or in the urban areas, it would be the militant labor unions.
Is it that despite all these decades and despite the government support for our military and anti-poverty measures, no matter how minuscule the 4,000 armed strength still disrupts the economic livelihoods and our national security, why is it that we've never been able to address this issue completely?
That's very correct, Madam Chair. Nonetheless, from a strength of about 26,000, we have reduced them to 4,000 armed strength right now. I think we are not losing in the armed combat, but there are other things that should be trained or directed towards the movement so that we could solve all their problems on health, education, and other things that would alleviate the conditions of the countryside. Which
Saying that the biggest recruiter to the insurgency movement is the continued poverty and the lack of basic amenities facilities for the vulnerable populations in the rural areas.
right on point, ma'am.
Okay.
Right on point.
Could you please give the committee a spread, a map of where these 4,000 armed groups are and your recommendation for multi-sectoral assistance, health, education, so it can be targeted. Anong tawag dun sa medical term?
Civic action.
Hindi.
No, no,
Medical. Ano yung
targeted
hindi ooperahan?
lace-
Ginaganon?
surgical.
Hindi Oo. Oh, basta. Oo. Targeted.
Targeted,
Naka-target. Oo.
yeah.
Targeted.
The
So, 4,000 lang po yan. 5 dekada na. Ang laki-laki
Correct.
po ng ating budget. Ako'y naniniwala talaga, bigyan mo lahat ng cash for work yan. Bigyan mo ng health center yung mga barangay nila. Turuan natin ang TESDA, bigyan natin ng kapital para magkaroon ng kabuhayan. Bigyan mo ng port ng mga lugar na yan. Bigyan mo ng mga bangka at lambat. Bigyan natin ng mechanization ng kanilang mga farming communities. At huwag aabusuhin naman ng mga armadong grupo ng pamahalaan at huwag magkaroon ng human rights abuses. We can win them over because iilan na lang yung ideology dyan. It's really poverty they're battling.
We agree 100% with you, Madam Chair.
So tell us where we can help more so we win them over, not by killing them,
Yeah.
not by jailing them, but by converting them that government is present even in the most far-flung areas.
Yeah. The armed groups now are about 50% in 50% of them are in Mindanao. The rest are scattered all throughout Luzon and Visayas. We have to address them, but we have to address the roots of insurgency. Therefore, as you have said, we need to address basic needs, infrastructure needs in the countryside. We really need all departments and the whole nation to be addressing this problem. And so therefore, we are coming up with a recommendation to come up with a national campaign that will involve all departments as well as the private sector and the legislative branch of government and the whole of nation, so that we could once and for all address the problems that we have that generates the fighters as well as the sources of discontent.
We can never kill them,
We,
and we should not kill them.
in fact,
and
we have the
Our
enhanced,
soldiers will be dying, and our police will be dying all the time. There will be ambushes and skirmishes. It will be forever in the next generations. It's unfair.
the president himself has said, I do not want to be killing my fellow Filipinos
So-
and my soldiers and our soldiers dying. So we are coming up with a proposal on 12 clusters of activities that will involve the whole of nation. One of them would be the enhanced community integration program that will bring in the rebels, the armed rebels, and their supporters, giving them livelihood projects, resettlement funds, and the necessary education facilities, lalo na sa Lumad. We have the schools there that are run by, some schools are run by the NPA in the mountains. Their national anthem is the international. So we really have to go back there. And why? It's a simple, the simple answer is we have failed to provide the needs for these IPs.
Will the NSC be able to provide a committee where are the areas that need to be helped? And as you mentioned, a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach, and I will ask the DA for FMRs, we will ask the DOH for the HFEPs, we will ask the DOLE for TUPAD cash for work projects, the DSWD for SLP sustainable livelihood programs, so that these areas which may not be serviced by these government departments, since you know it best, I'll make sure that if they say it's covered, so it's covered. So the 12 clusters, yes.
The whole of government approach would actually use the funds mostly of existing funds of government, but we need some additional funds to have surgical approach to some problems. We have proposed the executive order for the creation of the National Task Force, which should be rightfully civilian-led. The activity on the operations of armed forces and PNP is just one of the 12 clusters. Meaning, let us admit it, that while the military has been largely and the police have been largely addressing the problem, it cannot be that it's the military alone and the armed forces that
Our
will
men
do
and
it.
women will always die in the next generations. It will
Yes.
never solve it. If
will
we're
not.
able to solve it, it should have been solved a long time ago. Yes.
We
But
agree.
I agree with you. The suggestion came from you for the whole of society approach, the whole of
Yes.
government approach.
Yes.
And I would be I would appreciate receiving your 12 clusters, where it is, what are the existing government facilities there, if any, just a profile of these areas and the kind of conflict and the kind of threat. Is it NPA? Is it BIFF? Is it MI? Is it other groups? Or just criminal syndicates? And then what kind of government assistance is needed? Is it a farming community? Is it an ARC, an agrarian reform community? Is it coastal? And what are the issues? Ano ang dahilan kung bakit sila napunta sa kanilang, sa grupong yon? Were there military abuses, police abuses? Nayolanda ba sila or naundoy at pinabayaan ng pamahalaan? We were absent, we were not compassionate, we didn't help them. So, DTI must be present, the negosyo centers, we will have TESDA, my law of Barangay Kabuhayan Act of creating barangay skills training center in 4th, 5th, and 6th class communities. We will build barangay Kabuhayan centers. We will put training for skills in those areas. I'm sure those areas are rich in resources.
As soon as we have the draft EO ready, we will submit that to you, Madam Chair, and our proposals for the 12
Secretary,
clusters.
with all due respect, well, let's not wait for the EO. I want to use the budget as the better tool than the EO. The EO will just create a general, task force.
I'll come
Task
back.
forces come and go. I've been sitting here for 20 years. Task forces, new people, new budget, meeting. Hindi na po, alam ko na yung problema eh.
Yeah.
Pinag-aralan na natin to eh. Sabi nga nyo, surgical. Sabi nga nyo, whole of government approach. I've always been saying this, let's map out and you have it. Give me the profile, political, environmental, when you say political, even LGUs, and then socio-economic profile so that we will know what the needs are. And then, ibabangga ko yan sa lahat ng departamento sa kanilang budget. Pag nakita ko, let's say, Caraga, ito, sa lugar na ito, titingnan ko yung line item sa Caraga, o wala, sa DAR, o wala silang suporta sa ARC na ito, sa DA, o wala yung FMRs dito, o Andole, ba't wala kayong cash for work dito, o lagyan nyo dito, ililipat nyo. So I still have the chance till the budget is reaches the Senate to amend it, to realign it in areas where there are the poorest populations. And the biggest recruiter out of the insurgency is to show compassion and empathy to our fellow Filipinos. Don't you agree?
I agree, 100%.
We'll be killing
Madam
each
Chair.
other all our lives.
We will come up with the proposals in, can we have 1 week for that?
Week.
1 week.
So I think that would be
very
a very
importantly-
novel approach.
Yeah. We have been working on it actually. Very importantly, I must say that the reason why we seem to be losing is just imagine we are losing in the information operations side. How come students would still prefer to join the demonstrations and believe that the CPP-NPA would be a better government than the democratic setup that we have?
First of all, there's nothing wrong. We should not kill people because of ideology. Iba-iba po ang ating pananaw. Maaring ang iba ay kapitalista, iba ay hindi naniniwala sa kapitalista, sa capitalism. There's nothing wrong. Iba-iba ang ating paniniwala. Iba naniniwala may climate change, iba wala daw. Ganun lang yun eh. Iba, communist ang ideology, walang masama. Walang masama. Sometimes I've been tagged as left of center. That's fine. I'm not very capitalist. That's fine. Let's respect each other's different ideology. As long as we don't overthrow the existing duly elected local and national government, as long as we don't use the armed struggle, we can debate, and not just debate, put flesh in our debate by helping the poor. So what is the root cause of the insurgency? Poverty, the lack of presence of government. Ang laki-laki ng buwis, wala naman napupunta, kaya mahirap pa rin at gutom sila. Oh, so bigyan natin, ilapit natin ang gobyerno. Diba? Ganun eh. But as you said, tinanggal na yung batas na nag-outlaw sa Communist Party eh. Hindi ba? So, hindi dapat tayo mag-outlaw ng ideology. Talagang iba-ibang pananaw ng tao. Walang masama na iba-ibang pananaw. Yan ang demokrasya eh.
What I'm saying is, we are not proving ourselves to be the better alternative.
We've failed.
Meaning,
We've miserably failed, all of us, collectively.
Yeah.
Even I've been sitting here for 20 years. I've been part of peace talks. I've joined humanitarian missions to the Utrecht. I've helped our Muslim brothers and sisters, and I want, at least in our watch, we'll be able to do it. I should have done it earlier, to look at your clusters. I didn't know that. But give us your clusters and study it further if it's enough to address the insurgency movement. And I've talked to the left, actually. They come to my office. They used to, at least, not anymore now. And I always tell them, yung inyong apat na pillars, nasa socio-economic reform na tayo. Ano yung linunsad?
political reforms, socio-economic reforms, KSER, and
Pang guest speaker eh. I'm sure ang Intel community. Kaya ako ini-monitor ng ISAP kasi nagpupunta ako sa UP. Akong guest speaker ng KSER, di ba?
DG Monteagudo will assure you that
So,
you are
ako naman ay lantara, ako guest speaker, pinopost ko pa online mga speech ko. Tapos sinabi ko sa kanila, bago pa nyo matapos ang peace talks nakasuspindi, ginagawa ko na sa budget. Suriin nyo lahat ang batas ko, lahat yan dapat nakikinabang kung ina-implement ng ayos. So gawin na natin. Magandang may EO, magandang may task force, goodwill yan. Eh, kailan pa matatapos yung EO? Ibig sabihin, popondohan na naman for next year. Hindi, gawin na po natin ngayon. So let's have that, you name it something. It's not going to be lodged in your budget. So, with the departments, but may special provision to that some of the projects here are geared towards poverty alleviation for, you'll craft it. You will help us craft it in response to the 12 clusters of, ganun. Ha? Pero hindi nakalodge sa inyo because you're not an implementing agency.
it's the different clusters will be led by different government agencies. Like peace talks will be led by OPAP. Basic infrastructure will be led by Public Works. It's only the military operations that will be led by AFP-PNP. The information operations must be lodged with the PCO at all possible, or with your
Sige
help.
po, tapos
With your
na ang
help,
budget nyo.
IO must be your.
Ano po?
We will need your advice on information operations.
That's why we should just let everyone know down the line of what government is doing, all the good programs. But honestly, I can see so much wastage.
Yeah.
Corruption will always be there. I wish we could eradicate it. Pero paano ba naman ang buhay na ito? Every country, every government, it cannot be eradicated, unfortunately, 100%. But in the wastage, rice na lang eh. There's 800,000 metric tons of wastage of milled rice, and we import 1.2 million metric tons. So 800,000 metric tons is wasted in the packaging. Isn't that shocking? So there's so much wastage and there's so much need. So anyway, hahaba po ang usapan. I will no longer prolong this budget. We all want to have peace within our lifetime. I will ask for your 12 clusters. Think about it. If kulang, saan po yung area? Give me the usual complete staff work, political profile, environmental profile. I want to know the resources and the needs there. I want to know what are the opportunities for livelihood. I want to know which threat group is present there. And then we will make sure that the government agencies know it and address that. So, when do you intend to finish your EO? Even before the EO is signed, even before the task force is created, we already provided the solution or part of the solution in next year's budget.
We'll come back immediately, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support, additional support that you have been giving the National Security Council.
Thank you also. Nika, yes, I already have your copy here, so there's no need. May question lang, why is there NICA input for Philippine embassy issuance of visas? I didn't know that was done. Some countries
Yes.
are being monitored, watched, or there's clearance.
The Department of Foreign Affairs asked for record check on applicants for a visa, Philippine visa, and we check it if they are in the list of, say, suspected terrorists or that they have been involved in any.
What countries are being watched, or you're not in a position to say it?
We have actually only very few countries that are required visa. I'm sorry, but I cannot provide you. Yeah, but
Anyway, yun
but
lang.
most of actually, ma'am, majority of the countries in the world are free of visa entering the country. Even Middle Eastern countries come here without a visa, and there are just a few. And when they apply, the DFA asks for clearance. Not all of them. So it depends on the consulate. If they think they suspect something, then they will ask for a record check.
Okay, I've asked this every year. I'd like to ask it again. Where do you get all your information? Because you gather all your information, and you don't have a big budget. So where do you get your information? All other agencies have their confidential and intel funds. I recall, was it last year, you always say, hindi naman binibigay sa amin eh. Hindi ba?
Yes,
Parang tinatago lang nila. So kanya-kanyang intel funds, kanya-kanyang kayo ang dapat nagpuput together, and then it's the NSC that advises the president. So if they don't give you their inputs, saan kayo kumukuha?
Before that, I'd like to thank you for the support you extended last year for NICA. The information that we gather, we have, of course, our central database with NICA, but we have, through the National Intelligence Committee, the other intelligence agencies with the PNP, AFP, PIDEA, and all the other agencies contribute information which we compiled. And at the moment, we are,
PNP Intel,
yes, ma'am, AFP,
AFP Intel,
ISAF,
the AFP,
NBI,
ISAP.
yes, ma'am, Bureau
Okay.
of Customs, PIDEA, Office of Transport Security,
So they give it to
Coast
you?
Guard. As needed, ma'am, as needed. Yes, ma'am. But right now, through your help, we have a project with the National Security Council. We are setting up a national intelligence center, which will integrate all this information.
In the absence of that Intel Center, what happens to all the Intel reports of the agencies which have Intel and Confi budgets?
We have through the NIC we have a what's this research CRAD, Center for Research Central Records Division in the NICA, which has a rich database, ma'am. Even that, however, is a continuing effort, because I will admit that that is one of the areas that we are working on to completely digitize everything. We have,
Are
because
there agencies that refuse to share information with the NICA? Or perhaps they're not supposed to give you the information anyway? So my question is, lahat ba ng ahensyang